Part of the task of the religious leaders of Jesus' day was to see to it that the people of God observed all their traditions, and there were a lot of rules and regulations for Jews of the day to follow. There were around 630 of them in the law of the Old Testament, found in the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and that didn't include the other minor rules that developed around the major ones. The 15th chapter of Matthew provides us a little side note about one of those rules. You don't eat unless you thoroughly wash your hands. Cleanliness was a critical issue in Jewish tradition, including the washing of everything they bought at the market and the washing of cups, pots, and bronze kettles. Personally, I don't believe such acts of cleanliness are bad. It's a good idea to wash your hands, and I hope the signs in restrooms of restaurants for employees to wash their hands before returning to work are taken seriously. I hope they wash their dishes thoroughly before serving me food in them. Going to a restaurant and finding that my fork has crusted over food on it tends to spoil my appetite. So, I don't think this was a bad rule. I'm sure this rule helped prevent the spread of many diseases. Yet when the scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus why the disciples were going against the tradition of the elders by eating without washing their hands, they were rebuked. Why? I don't believe that following the tradition of washing one's hands was the real issue. I think what bothered Jesus was the focus of the religious leaders. Here they were surrounded with hurting people, crying out for hope and healing, and all the religious leaders could see were the disciples not washing their hands. The rebuke was Jesus' way of saying, come on people, open up your eyes. People are suffering and dying all around you, and you're going to get bent out of shape because we have a little dirt under our nails. Where's your sense of what's important? It's time to get with the program. The scribes and the Pharisees were claiming to worship God with their mouths, but were not reaching out to help the needy. That was only as good as providing God with lip service. Jesus rebuked the scribes and Pharisees by quoting Isaiah 29:13. This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. Serving God is more than just saying with our lips that we know God. It's more than saying, Lord, Lord, and not meaning it from our hearts. Think of the times we have fallen into the trap of only offering God lip service. Have you ever caught yourself just saying the Lord's Prayer because everyone else is repeating it rather than really praying it with meaning? Do we ever say when someone presents us with a concern, yes, I'll be praying for you, and then don't do it? Have you ever pulled out of a parking space and gotten halfway to where you were going before you realized, how did I get here? Did I even look to see if there was traffic before pulling out? It's scary, isn't it? It bothers me when I do something out of habit or tradition without really thinking about what I'm saying or doing. It's something like reading pages and pages of a book before you realize you haven't paid attention at all to what it was you were reading. What is the point in saying I love the Lord when I look upon my time with God as merely an obligation and a drain on my resources? Just saying we love the Lord is not enough. The letter of James reminds us that not even speaking the word of the Lord is enough. As followers of Christ, we are not to be speakers and hearers of the word only. We are called to be doers of the word. Being a speaker of the word and a hearer of the word without being a doer of the word is living as a fraud. Don't talk the talk if you can't walk the walk. God doesn't need Christian pretenders. Jesus said that it's not what goes into our mouths that defile us, but what comes out. What does he mean by that? It means that you can go through all of the external motions you want, but unless you're doing it because of love, then it doesn't matter. It's the same thing that Paul said in the 13th chapter of his first letter to the Corinthians. It doesn't matter if you can do all of these things. If you don't have love in your heart, if you don't have love, then you are just going through the motions. Jesus based all of his actions out of love. We have to move from love as well. Love is what flows from within. Love should be our motivating factor. And if we do let love be our guide, then it will cause us to jump into action. If we are filled with love, then we will want to reach out to our neighbor. If we are filled with love, then we will want to find out who is hungry and feed them. If we are filled with love, then it will make us sick to our stomach when we see someone being abused, and we will want to help that person. If we are filled with love, then we will not look at someone differently because of his or her skin color, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, or station in life. We will only see a child of God. I see a lot of similarities between the Christian church today and the Pharisees of Jesus' day. So many think that if they wear this or don't wear that, or if they do this or don't do that, or don't associate with certain people, then they are living the Christian life. But folks, that just ain't so. It doesn't matter what you may or may not be doing if you don't have a heart filled with love toward your neighbor. The Pharisees were blameless according to the law, but they didn't have love in their hearts. Jesus calls us to a life of love, not a life of rules and regulations. The rules and regulations are there to help us live better and more productive lives. But if we live our lives blameless in the sight of the law, but leave a neighbor hungry or cold, then we have missed the mark. You see, Jesus told us that there really are only 2 commandments. There are only 2 things that we must do, and I emphasize must do, to live a life that is worthy of being called his disciples. Those are to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and body, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And upon these 2 hang all the law and the prophets. It's as simple as love. How will they know you are my disciples? He asked. By the love you show one another. May we always live our lives based on the gospel of love.
We are constantly making new content to help you on your walk of faith. Please like and subscribe to make sure you stay up to date with the latest content.